Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent Training. Welcome to our live Friday broadcast. We teach this class every Friday at 12 o'clock Seattle time, and you can join, ask your questions, and get resources and information about American English pronunciation, American accent training, intonation, everything you need to improve your personal and professional communication in American English. We've been talking in the last couple of weeks about how to tackle difficult words, so words which are difficult to pronounce. Sometimes those words are difficult for everyone to pronounce, even native speakers, and sometimes you have particular words that you find challenging. And so last week we were looking at some resources for helping you tackle any word that you find challenging. Please feel free to ask your questions at any time in the chat. I have a number of requests I'm going to cover that have come in over the week. So people will email me with requests. They comment in the videos and ask for pronunciation help. I always direct people to resources, but I have a list this week of words and questions that people have asked on the community page here on YouTube, on Facebook, and also on my website, speechmodification.com. So welcome. If you're new to the broadcast, welcome. And please, again, feel free to ask your questions at any time. I'll go through and check those. So first, I want to talk about some of the requests that came in on the community page over this past week. So if you go to Speech Modification Seattle, the channel page, you'll see that I often have quizzes and resources and information for you every day. So there'll be either a sneak preview for a new class, a link to a video or lesson on my website that you might find useful, and often these quick quizzes to help you check your knowledge and find resources. So today I was asking about which words you would like to hear in today's class. And so some of the choices were word pairs like year versus ear, man versus men. We had a request for the words dad versus dead, and then some other words like battle versus bottle and settle versus subtle. So most of these differences all come in from vowel sounds. And using my vowels playlist to help you understand what the vowels of American English are can be very helpful. Also, we'll talk about these specific vowels and words in just a moment. First, I want to check in with some questions that are coming in the live class, and I'll get back to those in a moment. Susan wants to know if it's a big mistake if people use the Spanish O instead of ah. For example, in the words on and talk. She says she personally uses ah to avoid using the ah, but sometimes Spanish speakers use o. All right, so yes, so I would say when Spanish speakers and other speakers, many languages, native languages will do this, when we see the letter O, for example, in words like on and long, or talk, we may be pronouncing the vowel letter rather than vowel sound. So I think using on, I don't think I really do much of an ah, on. I think I use an ah, on. So I don't use that pronunciation. I use the ah vowel in the word on, but I do think it is a problem to use an o. If you say own, on. So the American O would be own, and that would obviously be a different word. That's this word own. The Spanish O, on. Yeah, I think that is different enough from our ah vowel that I would highly recommend listening for and learning the ah vowel rather than the O vowel in that word. Talk. In this word, I do use the ah vowel, so I would rewrite that word as talk, so I can think about that vowel ah. And if you use talk with an ah vowel versus talk, Some places in the US, these two vowels are fairly similar, so you can probably get away with that. But toque, toque, using the Spanish O, again, I would say that's an error pattern that you want to try to correct. It's too rounded, it's too ah versus O, it's too closed, and our ear is not going to interpret the word correctly. We may have difficulty knowing what word you're trying to say using an O rather than an ah. For you, if you're trying to get the ah vowel without it being an O, the difference there is that with the O, we have rounding, O, and our jaw is fairly closed. The ah, our jaw is more open and our lips are rounded. And the ah, our jaw is all the way open and there's no lip rounding. If you go to my website, speechmodification.com, if you haven't already downloaded my vowel guide, I highly recommend that because it helps you orient to these differences. It gives you some visual information. So for example, here's my ah vowel you're asking about. It's rounded, it's central, and versus my O vowel is higher and rounded, and my ah vowel is more open and less rounded. Once you get used to orienting where vowel sounds are happening in the mouth and also hearing them, it becomes easier to match the vowels in American English. Thank you. That's a great question. And I see you had one more comment, which is Susan's telling us she's half Italian, and we have these consonants, but the vowels O versus ah and A versus sound very similar. Yes, so another way to begin to orient to where those differences are in American English between the vowels you're mentioning are hearing some of these minimal pairs. So earlier when we were looking at men and man, for example, being able to start to sort out those two vowel sounds and pull them apart from each other, because probably in your brain there's kind of stored with one vowel sound. For example, the vowels that you mentioned, A versus you probably have this in Italian, but not this. Same as in Spanish. And in English, we don't actually have this one by itself. We say A, that's in the words like main, versus if you were to say it with just this A vowel, it would be men, versus we say main, we hold it longer and we close. And so the error that you may have is that in a word like men or main, you might be saying both of these more with the A vowel. And what you need is for this vowel to have it be longer, may, and for this vowel for it to be lax, the F vowel, men. So that brings me to our men versus man discussion. So when I'm saying the vowel in man, my mouth is more open. So all of these vowels happen in the front. My tongue is forward in my mouth. But for men and man, the main difference is that man is the most open and men is more central. If I look at the vowels here on the vowel sheet, I'm going to be seeing that min, M-I-N, would be the most closed, then men, and then man. What I try to do is pair those words with some anchors. So for the vowel, my anchor words are red tent. And for the vowel, my anchor words are black cat. For words like men and man, I might also pair it with a word that's easier for me to say that vowel in. So for example, I might say 10 men versus that man. When I'm saying 10 men, I try to keep my vowel consistent between those two words. Or that man, try to keep my vowel consistent. If I'm saying 10 and that may be easier for me to pull those apart than it is on words like men and man, where everything else is the same, and my brain might have a little trouble hearing and differentiating those words. Okay, so that's kind of a general technique, learning the vowel sounds, learning some anchors, and doing that comparison. And I hope that helped you with your specific questions about your specific vowels. We have another question about the pronunciation of pecan, as in pecan pie. And she's asking what the most common pronunciation is. I haven't researched this, so I'd have to go and look into what the tendencies are. I tend to say pecan with an ah vowel. I also have heard pecan with the ah vowel. And I think in both cases, it's second syllable stress, pecan or pecan. I maybe might hear also sometimes pecan with first syllable stress, pecan pie, pecan pie, pecan pie. No idea what's most common. I think it depends on where you are and how you learned that word. So sorry, I don't have an accurate answer for you, but at least I can tell you about some different pronunciations that are all correct and acceptable pronunciations for your word. Ksenia wants to know, she says she's struggling to pronounce the stop T before consonants, as in outbreak or in sentences. It's not that hot, or wait for me. It sounds jerky and disconnected. Any tips to make the linking smoother, or maybe how to make the stop T shorter and quicker, or other recommendations? Okay, great. Yes. So Ksenia's mentioning how we have words like hot, or we use a stop T in the middle of words, like in outbreak. Yes, if I am making too much of a stop there, hot today. What was your other? It's not that hot. Not that hot. What I tend to do is I do stop the T. This wasn't one of your examples, but this is probably the easiest place to start, which is when I make that stop T, hot, and I don't release it, I just release it into the next word. So that's easiest to try and practice if the next word is also a T, because I can say hot today, and my tongue is right there for my T. Hot today, it's hot today. And then I'm still making the stop T, but it's linking naturally into the next word. In a word like outbreak, what I think we tend to do there is the stop T happens further back, maybe all the way back in my throat. I'm still stopping the air, but I might not be saying outbreak with lifting my tongue to the T position, outbreak. I hesitate to say stop it too far back because you don't want it to sound like outbreak, out. You don't want that kind of glottal stop sound. But if I'm thinking T and I'm just stopping the air before I get to lifting my tongue, outbreak, perhaps my tongue is lifting a little further back. I'm moving and releasing right into that B. For not that hot, for these stop Ts, again, for not that, what I'm doing there is I'm getting ready for the TH as I'm making the stop T. So I'm saying not that. Again, I think I'm stopping the air a little further back and focusing on having the tongue ready for the TH position, not that hot. That one I'm definitely making the stop T with my tongue behind my teeth. I would say in general to try to not sound so choppy with the stop T. One thing that you can try is to make a very light T. So I might say something like not that hot, not that hot. I would say that is a little bit disruptive, but maybe in cases like outbreak, just trying to lighten up and think of that as a very, very small T. And you may not actually be making the T. The important thing is to not leave it out entirely. Yeah, it is challenging to make it and make it smooth when the next sound is a consonant. So probably I would start with similar consonants. So things like hot today, hot dog, where you have other consonants, hot dog, hot sauce, where the tongue is very close. So practice a word that ends with T, and the next word that starts with T, D, S, TH, L, all these kind of more front sounds. Once that becomes smoother, hopefully that will be an easier transition. Then maybe by then your stop T will be more naturally linking in your sentences, and it'll help take care of that jerky quality or that disruptive quality you notice with the stop T. Great question, thank you. And a challenging pattern. I'll give it some more consideration. If I can think of other ways to suggest to help you, I will bring those up as well. All right, we have a request for the word souvenirs, and I'm guessing that was you who also asked for Eiffel Tower, so that's on my list. So for souvenir, we stress the last syllable. So the first two syllables are short, souvenir. Our first sound is the oo, which I can think of as being spelled like oo, su, same as in the word soon. Suva. We have vowel schwa there, unstressed. And then lastly, ear. We have an e and then our sound, souvenir. So I'm thinking about this as the diphthong ear, and short. So I would rewrite it as su, va, near. Maybe I would write near like that because it's the same as our word near, souvenir. And just practice whichever parts are most difficult for you. Maybe starting with the near because it's stressed and has the ear, which is going to be potentially the most challenging. And then build it up slowly. Souvenir, souvenir, souvenir. Try to bring it together. And Eiffel Tower has the I diphthong, just like the word I. Make sure that you're putting both the ah and the I sounds in there. I, full. That is sort of like the word full, but you can also think of it as a schwa and a dark L, Eiffel, Eiffel. Long, short. Second syllable is short and unstressed. First syllable is stressed. Eiffel Tower. That has the ow diphthong and then an at the end. So if the parts are difficult, if that phrase is difficult for you, for souvenir or Eiffel Tower, working on your R and then building it into those words is going to help you. Thanks for the request. And I do think you asked me that either earlier this week or the week before. So thank you for bringing it up again, because I'm apologizing for not having brought it up last week if that's when it came up. Okay, we have a question about beat versus bid, which should be pronounced longer. So beat and bid, there are two differences here. In beat, we have the E vowel, which generally is produced and held a little longer than the I vowel. But in the word beat, we have a voiceless T, which requires my word overall to be shorter, versus in the word bid, the voiced D makes this word longer. So they may actually end up being about the same length. A better comparison maybe for thinking about the length would be this one. So if we're looking at, first off, the E vowel tends to be held slightly longer than the I vowel. However, the vowel is much less important than whether there's a T or a D sound. So this is going to be my shortest bit. And then these two will be similar. Beat and bit are generally the shortest, versus bid and bead are going to be longer. So paying closer attention to whether or not there's a voice sound at the end. Beat and bead, bit and bid, is more important than the length of these two vowels. A better distinction between the E and the I is whether or not the E is tense and the I is a lax vowel. That's similar to one of our question words, which was live and leave. I think a lot of times when people are taught about this E vowel, they're taught it to be long E. And I don't like that designation because I think that then people will try to say the I vowel just by saying it shorter, and they might say leave and leave, and that's incorrect. That would be using this vowel for longer and for shorter, and then I need to make these two vowels distinct from each other because just saying this word shorter does not make it this word and helps contribute to the confusion between those sounds. So I don't use the terminology long and short, E or I. I use the symbols and the sounds to help. So thank you for your question, and it's definitely a challenging combination of vowel sounds. So we have another question about the vowel sound and whether the tip of the tongue should press against the lower front teeth when you say ah. It doesn't really matter. I think it depends on the length of your tongue. You definitely want your tongue more forward. So if you're trying to say ah as in hat versus ah as in hot, what you'll feel is ah, my tongue right now, ah, is kind of gently touching against my teeth. It doesn't have to be, but what I don't want is the tongue pulled back into the ah position. Ah. Actually, there I feel like the front of my tongue is still touching my teeth. So it's more about is the back of my tongue is filling up more of the mouth. And for ah, the back of my tongue is really pushing down. So if I looked at my mouth, say this is the roof of my mouth, and here's my tongue, and here's my teeth. This is a little bit rough of a drawing. For the there's not as much space here in the back for the sound to happen. But for the ah, there's a great big space, and that makes the ah sound versus the ah sound. Even though I'm opening, and it's the most open of the front vowels, it's more closed in the back, and that's how we hear that difference. So to answer your question, if your tongue naturally touches ah, towards behind your teeth when you're making that sound, then that's fine. But it's more about where the space is for the resonance in the mouth for the different vowel sounds. Okay, great questions today. I have a few more requests that came in this week that I want to make sure that I cover, but go ahead and continue to ask your questions. Oh, we had one more, which was the pronunciation of nauseous. Yeah, this is definitely one that doesn't look the spelling does not match the sounds. So na, I would rewrite it, spell it more like this: nauseous, nauseous. First syllable stress, and vowel ah here, and an just a schwa sound here. So that's an ah, nauseous, and a unstressed schwa, nauseous. And the S in this case is the SH sound, nauseous. Yes, okay, so great question. And some of the other requests from this week were for the words battle and bottle. So we were just talking about versus ah. And so battle has my front vowel, my black cat. So maybe I might try to associate that. Cat, battle, versus bottle has my not hot vowel, my open back vowel. So I might try cat, battle, and hot, bottle, trying to keep my vowel consistent between those two. It was also requested the difference between settle and subtle. And so settle versus subtle. The only difference here again is the vowel. Here I have the red tent vowel, and here I have the such fun vowel. And so I might try For example, the word never also has my vowel. Never settle versus maybe I would use such subtle, or fun, subtle. Something to help me consistently make that which is more in the front, versus the which is more central between settle and subtle. Another question coming in about, the word before. The words before and because. So the question is, what do we say here? Do we say be, as in the words to be, or do we say buh with a schwa? And actually, I sometimes will say these words before, because with a schwa, but in the dictionary, I see them often written as a before. So the most important thing is that in both of these words, the be is not stressed, and so it's not going to be the same as be. It's not before or because, but I want it to be an unstressed, short, reduced vowel. So in most cases, I tend to say it as before or because with my reduced vowel, but I think no one will really hear the difference between before and before in connected speech. It's most important to use that reduced vowel sound and have it to be short. For words that have an unstressed it's often an vowel rather than an vowel. Just try to avoid using the before. I do sometimes hear Americans say before, and they have the same influence that non-native speakers do, where they see the letters be, especially if they're trying to say that word by itself, they may mispronounce it with an e vowel. So it's not terrible for being understood, but it's definitely something where it will stand out as being slightly different in your speech if you're using a clear E on the words like before and between. You're welcome. Thank you. Okay, so one last request we had was for the words dead versus dad. And again, there's my red tent, vowel, and my black cat vowel. And so for dead, my mouth is less open versus dad, my mouth is more open. And so I might just try, again, pairing it with a word that might be easier, like 10 dead and had dad, or that dad, and trying to make sure that my mouth is more open when I'm saying in dad versus in dead. Once you get established some anchors, if you have certain words that you know you're saying the vowel correctly, try to pair those with dead versus the if you have words that are easier for you to say that have the sound, then pair those with dad. Some of the other requests we had really quickly, we had the word certificates. And so we start with an S sound, even though it's spelled with a C. We have our vowel we have vowel twice, and then a schwa and a TS. So stress on the certificates. It's almost like there's no vowel there at the end. We also had faculty. That's my black cat vowel. First syllable stress and short, long and short, faculty, cool. In this case, there is maybe a tiny schwa, but again, almost no vowel, facul. I almost go right from the K to the L. And then being careful that my Y at the end has the tense vowel E, faculty. Similarly, university, third syllable stress, university. The city is one to watch out for. We tend to use a flap T, sounds a little bit like a D, and we have to go from the lax I to the tense E, itty. So, and we have this letter U actually says U. So even though it starts with a vowel, it has the Y glide at the start. University, and then my sound. So there's, depending on what's challenging for you here, you may want to just really focus in on the stressed syllables, which vowels are there, and then if you have some challenges with the L or the R sound, work on those in other words as well to help you with those words. We also had a request for the word firstly, and again, even though I spell that with IR, it has just my sound. So I usually would want to start with then I might try fur, and then I might try to add in first, and finally, lastly, firstly. And in this case, when I say first, I'm saying my aspirated T, releasing it. But when I'm saying firstly, that goes back to our stop T. We had a question about that at the beginning, where I'm going to just move up from the S to the T, firstly, but I'm only going to release into the L. So I won't really have the firstly, but rather a stop T releasing into L. Firstly. First syllable stress and short second syllable stress. This is one that I think would be useful to have a longer video for, so I've added it to my list of videos to create for you. Okay, so a few other requests came in on the community page, and I'll save those for next week because I see that we're running out of time. But I really appreciate your questions and comments, both on the YouTube channel, comments on the videos, and on Facebook as well. Thank you for being a part of class and asking your great questions today. I do think this topic of difficult words and challenging words is one that would warrant another week of looking at it. So we'll talk about it again next week. So be thinking about what words you might like help with, and let me know at any time. I'll add them to my list and we'll talk about them in class. And after that, we'll probably go back to reviewing some sounds and patterns, some vowel sounds, and perhaps, again, going back to looking at our intonation patterns and how that affects our pronunciation and accent as well. Thank you so much for being a part of class today, and I look forward to seeing you again next Friday. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound American, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Thanks, everybody. Bye, guys.